The UK's Conservative Party leader, the Nigerian-born British Kemi Badenoch, continues to be controversial. In her recent speech, she said, "I identify more as Yoruba than as Nigeria." She, in previous times, she also said she said the advocacy campaign for reparation is a scam. Now, before we talk about how she's inflicting this ethnic division, saying that I identify as Yoruba than as Nigeria, although there's nothing wrong to be proud of our tribes, but the thing is, we need, on our journey of unity, we should not inflict such ethnic divisive language, and especially coming from leaders who are from the Western countries. So let's dig a bit of history here. What she said. She said previously she has dismissed slavery reparations as a scam and argued that the British Empire should be remembered for ending slavery rather than for its role in the transatlantic slave trade. And she has resisted also calls to teach Black history in school. Mind you, it's really a key to teach our youth, and she has denied that in her party. And then, so she said advocacy for reparation is a scam. Also, she said the UK's wealth from white privilege, or the UK's wealth is not from white privilege or white supremacy. So, and it's recently that she also added before that, she also said the British Empire ended slavery, the Atlantic slave trade, and we need to talk about that more. I mean, before we go to what she said, this Yoruba and Nigeria thing, let's talk about that. She's right. The British Empire has ended the slavery, but when it is ended it in the UK, it has continued by law to do it in the Caribbean, and that specific island is Barbados. Well, that's why we see the leadership in Barbados is fighting in the forefront about and advocating and campaigning about reparation, because they have legalized it there. Okay, now those slave masters, when they see that it is illegal in the UK, they went to the Caribbean and they said, okay, we can legalize it, and so we do whatever we want to do. And by the way, when they apply that, they said because the Black people are not human, they are less human, and they are barbaric, and they are wild and barbarians. That's what is written in the law, and that's how they legalized it. And Barbados continued to be a place, where they also exported to other Caribbean countries and to the United States and to the Europe, because it was legal for them there. And now, again, so I say, let's dig a bit of history. Reparation is not something just a moral claim. It is actually a claim in international law. It's supported by international law, because you know why? Because it's a crime against humanity. It's a crime of genocide. And then, the solution for it is that there has to be a reparation or a compensation to those who are inflicted, or who are victims of it or impacted by it, because it's a generational tax we are paying because of slavery, because of the slavery, the transatlantic slave trade. So there are 15 million, as far as my reading is, or as per my reading, there are 15 millions of Africans who are transported to the across the transatlantic Sea, and then to the Caribbean, to the United States, to Europe, and those not only those who arrived there, but also the one who died during the journey, the mistreatment, the disease, all the things that has been applied against Black people. It was really a horrific period in the history of humankind, up until today. I mean, let me tell you, slavery was, before any terrorism in this modern history of humankind, slavery was the first form of terrorism. And those slave plantations were actually the first concentration camp before we know any concentration camp that history tells us about the Jews in Germany. So the slave plantation was the first form of concentration camp, and slavery was the first form of terrorism. And this, to the very minimum, people have to be paid for all the things that they have been deprived of. We are talking about a crime of against humanity, a crime of mutilation, lynching, depriving the people from their culture, knowledge, belief, spirituality, everything. People say that they have no knowledge when the European arrives, that these are barbaric people. Guess what? They don't show you this is why they don't teach you. Go and read history. What was his name, that Walter Rodney, how Europe underdeveloped Africa. In his book, he actually quote what a Dutch merchant wrote when they arrived in Guinea in the 16th or 12th century, actually writing in their biography, saying that this city or town is more advanced than Amsterdam, and mentioning places and comparing even the width of the road and the way it is built and the cleanness of the place and how people keep their hygiene, all the things. We were more advanced than any other humankind in the world. Africans were on the next level. So do not take them, do not believe them when they tell you that we were not developed or we were barbaric or whatever. They are lying. Their own people have it in their history. Okay, so we just have to dig a little bit of our own history. So I just wanted to bring that, as far as reparation is concerned. And guess what? Even when they wanted to end it for once and for all, I told you when they ended it in the UK, it was still the same British slave owners were continuing by legalizing it in Barbados, in the Caribbean. And after benefiting a lot, when they finally also wanted to abolish it, guess what they said? Oh, okay, then we have to make an end to this. We have to make some kind of compensation. And guess what? Who they chose to compensate? They compensated the slave masters. Do you know how much they paid them? About $47 million, 47 millions of pound at that time in the 16th century, which is equal to now in the 21st century, that value is equal to 178 billions of pound. And ask me, when did Britain ended paying that money to the slave masters? It was as near as 2015, after 200 years of paying it. Out of the 47 millions of pound, guess what? Because that was more than even the annual budget of Britain itself. They say, okay, out of this 27 millions of pound will be paid by the slaves themselves with their own labor to the slave master. So even after they abolished it, they continue to use the labor of, in generational wise, the labor of these African people. And the rest, 20 millions of pound, was paid to the slave masters bit by bit, because that was as equal as Britain's annual budget. So they cannot allocate the whole thing and pay in one time to those slave masters. So they finished it after 200 years. Their generation of the slave master have been reaping the benefit of from the slave people. What should have been paid as a reparation to Black people was paid to the slave masters. I really hope that Kemi Badenoch knows this, but not perhaps not allowed to talk about this. She's, she's a good harvest of colonization in the way that they program your mind, and this is the way they want you to talk about. She's a good product in, just to say that she's a good product of colonization and slavery, but not to forget, and she's forgetting those people who fought against slavery, against colonialism, including women, for her to be where she is today and to act the way she's acting today and to talk the way she's talking today for her freedom. People have sacrificed in their lives. She's standing on a sacrifice on the blood and sweat of Black people who advocated for their equality. And now she tell us reparation is a scam. She's a scam. I really don't know how Africa is managing to produce such people who are against, who hate themselves. I don't know how we manage to continue producing such people. So yeah, so now she's now talking about, she continue to be controversial, and my point of departure for today is because I read this on LinkedIn after Kemi Badenoch said that I identify more as Yoruba than as Nigerian. Guess what? When during her political activism in the UK, before she made it to be a leader, she leaned more as a Nigerian and gathered her votes from Nigerians. Okay, but yeah, here is the thing. I would like to share that with you. So this is a person who reflected. Her name's Alexandra Tokomte. This is here. Kemi Badenoch I identify more as a Yoruba than a Nigerian. So she wrote, this lady on LinkedIn, I have learned not to get angry at our lost sister. I kind of understand her anyway. Emoji laughing. The other day, she called us Pan-Africanists scammers, because we say that Africa deserves reparations, especially financial reparations. Member of Parliament MP Badenoch will never have the courage to mention that Germany has paid Israel for the Holocaust, and I think it's even still paying. Will she say that Israel is scamming? She will never. Well, money is good for everybody, not only for the Jewish people. Today, she says she identifies as Yoruba more than a Nigerian. The thing is that it is not by claiming it, it's by living it that she should demonstrate how she is Yoruba. Nevertheless, it's her choice of life, but personally, I don't think Africa needs this kind of tribal mentality at the moment. We all have tribes we are proud of, but there is an imperative need to de-balkanize the continent and need to unite Africa against all odds and avoid sparking such unnecessary polemics. I prefer MP Badenoch to say that she's British, grown up like British, working for the interest of UK and obeying orders. That describes her perfectly, and it's okay. Yes, she's not Nigerian, she's British, and it's not a sin. So this is, after reading this is what made me to come to you and, in fact, reflect for all the things that what she said before. As much as we have people who are advancing this campaign for reparation, for our people to get what they, let alone reparation, the African people or the Black people, they did not even get a proper apology from from the British Empire. We all know that Tony Blair, when he was a prime minister, he was interviewed and he said what? He said, no, this is there's no apology, because when we were doing slavery, then by that time it was legal, so there's nothing to apologize for. That's what he said. And we have many of them who also say, Africans, that also our own academicians who tells us the Africans also have contributed for slavery, but it has nothing to do. First of all, this is not something to be comparable. As per my reading, there was a place where this lady made a research, and in fact, there is a name for it. If I find it, I will share it with you. It's called a serfdom. It was not even called a slavery. It was called a serfdom. So serfdom and slavery is not something that is comparable. People were not raped in that serfdom. People were not mutilated. People were not kidnapped. People were not whipped. People were not deprived their liberty. It was a different act, but they want to tell us this was also committed slavery by African people against, or Black people against Black people. So let's continue to read our history and do our own research, because otherwise we become the victim of this kind of propaganda being dumped on us, and we don't know any better, and we just believe it. And it's going to be even more worse for our children if we do not teach them the African history or the Black history that they don't get to learn, let alone in the European academy or school curriculum. Not even in Back to Africa, our children are not taught our own Black history. So we better work on that. As Frederick Douglass said, of this Black American who was freed from slavery, he was he was advocating for education. I also stand by that. If we have, if we all do our our homework, our own responsibility of teaching our own people, our children, our siblings, whatever, in our own small network, in our own family, the Black history, then just imagine in 2-3 decades our people will be just fine. We don't need to talk about Pan-Africanism or anything, because they are weaponized with the proper tool of the right Black history. Or we should come up all together and find a way that we can teach the mass all in one time, because we cannot do it in school as it appears now. But whether it is online or something, that's, instead of fighting each other on this social media platform, better we come up and ask ourselves, what can we do? Okay, this is the time, but we cannot just live fighting. We also find a way how this is not going to happen again to our children. So that's what I wanted to say. But thanks again for tuning in. I wanted to share, actually, there were some interesting comments below that post, but I don't want to make it a longer one. But you can go ahead and read it. It's an interesting discussion in the comment section of that. But let us know in the comment section, what do you think of Kemi Badenoch and her approach to to reparation, calling it a scam. please share your view. Go ahead and subscribe to the channel, give it a like, share the video with others, and support us through our PayPal account. You can find it in the description section. Quick shout out, Child of God. They have put the impression out there about Africans that they are not our brothers, they are our enemies. Hell for unrepentant Europe, Christianity, slavery was inhuman, barbaric to any ancient slavery. Batsy, the curse of ethnic federalism. A lot of things here. So thank you all for for rooting here, for tuning, for your time. I appreciate it, and I don't take it for granted. But again, I would like you to share your view. It's a bye-bye for me for now. And if in any way you want us to continue this discussion, please drop your question in the comment section. Thanks and bye-bye.